Hi, I'm Cindy, and welcome to our Book Love Summer Book Discussion. I'm here today with Tim and Kim to continue our conversation about books for elementary school. We represent all the way K through fifth, sixth grade. So we're here to kind of give you some thoughts on books that you can use at the beginning of the school year. Kim, you want to go ahead and take us away?
Sure. So, in this session, we are going to be focusing on community. What is it? How do we create it? Why is it important? And as we all know, with children and ourselves, our very first community is our home. So, one of the first books I read each year is called A Family is a Family is a Family. You can see how rough and tattered it is because we've read it and loved it so much. And in this book, it's classroom and they're talking about their families. And one child is very hesitant to share out about their family. So they're sort of letting everyone else go first. And so all the children are talking about their families and who they are and how the majority of the families have different components. For example, when my dad met my mom, he had this many kids, she had that many kids. Now we're all together. Some people say I look like my mom. Some say I look like my dad. I think I look like myself. All of those kinds of beautiful blends and dynamics that we find in the family. At the end, we discover that the child who was hesitant to talk at first lives with a foster family. And so they say in the closing, I listened to everyone else, and then I remembered the time that someone saw us all together at the park. She asked my foster mother to point out her real children. Oh, I don't have any imaginary children, Mom said. All my children are real. And to this day, every time I read that page, I break out in goose pimples because it matters so much. And it's such a beautiful introduction for our children that when we're in the classroom, we are a family. We bring all our home lives together and we love and care for each other while we're together. And so that's how we form the foundation or the basis of community in our classroom space. And we build out from there. So that's where we start off each year.
Awesome. I love
I
that
love
book.
that. I love that. So this is a silly one. When we did our book draft, we mentioned in the last episode, serious or silly. It sort of just depends on the mood I am on the day I'm picking the book. But in the classroom, it really depends on the mood I am, or the mood in the room. There are definitely days when we are ready to sit down with Matt Della Pena or Jacqueline Woodson and be poetic and feel the story in the way that it's composed and written. And there are days for the book Unicorn Thinks He's Pretty Great, um, which is just delights kids every year. I have a magnet of Unicorn, and there's a sequel to this book. I'll mention it a little bit when I talk about it. But in the sequel, he tries to doll himself up with special glasses and a wig. He's trying to be really impressive, and so I have a magnet set where it's Unicorn being all fancy. But this is by Bob Shea, and this is my paperback copy, tried and true. Um, Unicorn shows up at school and is pretty impressive because he's magical because he's a unicorn. And the book is told from the goat's perspective, and he thinks he's so great with his magic horn, and he thinks he's so great, and everybody just loves him. And all I have are these two stupid horns and these hooves. I'm not him. And then, so this kind of hits on what we talked about when we talk about classroom values, but it also bleeds into community because you read this first one and then they discover that unicorn's my horn's not that great. I can't play soccer because I can't hit the ball with my head. And there's a picture of him with the ball all deflated on his horn. And Goat's oh, my horns are great for playing soccer. Everybody loves to play soccer with me. And they sort of learn that they each have something different to offer. And in the sequel, Unicorn is maybe not so great after all. Unicorn gets very conceited and basically just totally embarrasses himself and goes home in shame and is just home eating cake, feeling sorry for himself. He doesn't come to school the next day, and his friends come to him and they're like, what's wrong? And he's like, I embarrassed myself. And they're like, well, no, we're still your friends. You did embarrass yourself. That was pretty bad, but we're still your friends. Um, and so it just mirrors that like community we're trying to build in the classroom, that we're going to make mistakes. We're each different and unique. We each have different things to offer, and that's okay. Some of us are good at one thing and growing in another area. And so hitting those values, but then how that all comes together in community. These two books, especially after you've read this, it's great to come back the next week with Unicorn is maybe not so great after all. And they're like, there's another one. Um, and it's even sparklier. So
Yeah.
kids love that. And I mean, second and third grade kids love it if you tell them you love unicorns. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even have a unicorn mask, like a full, like fuzzy unicorn head that I put on sometimes. It doesn't necessarily pair with the book, but it's
Hey.
just kids
I
love
really
you.
wish I could say that surprises me, but we've known each other for a while, Tim. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can get them wound up.
love it.
So I teach fifth grade, and one of the things that I try and get kids up and running in as quickly as I can, which is usually the second or third week of school, is our first unit is on realistic fiction and book clubs. I'm going to kind of segue from a picture books, which I still read a picture book every single day, no matter what, whether we're reading chapter books or not. But I'm going to kind of segue and talk about how I try to build community through book clubs. One of the beautiful benefits of Book Love Foundation and their grants, I know Kim mentioned that a little bit ago, is I was able to buy like a nice inclusive set of 6 books so that when we start these book clubs, I have a whole list of books and kids can choose where they want to start. One of the things I challenge them is to start out the year by reading a book about somebody who is different than themselves so that they can learn about somebody different as sort of a way to build community. And then obviously we're building community by having discussions with each other and learning how to have those discussions. One of my favorite books off that list is Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. I think especially in our current environment, it's so, so important. And it really highlights for the kids, like how easily any of us could have an exception to something in a book that we read. And do we have the right to make that choice for other people to not be able to read and learn from that book? And the difference between what is censorship, what is actually banning a book. It gives me a chance to talk about book banning in the process in our district, which I didn't even know at the time that we had one, because the kids were all ready to go talk to the school board after reading the book. So I love the discussions that we have about books and why they're important to us, and stories and why they're important, and just that it also is really important that everybody has access and the right to choose. And it just is a really nice launching pad into those book discussions and building community through the power of story.
Wonderful.
I love that.
Yeah, and I love how you talk about like the creating of clubs and like opening space, like inviting everyone in, because quite often when kids create clubs, it's to exclude.
Right.
Or to keep people out, right? And so, Tim, your fun book about the unicorn brought me. This isn't really a silly book, but it's a little bit. I don't even want to say lighter, but it's called Strictly No Elephants. So it talks about a boy with a mini elephant, and it's written by Lisa Manchev. And so when you first open up, I'm like, this kid has a pet elephant. Like, who has a pet mini elephant, right? But what happens is he goes to the pet club like he does every week, but the sign says strictly no elephants. So he can't come in because elephants aren't allowed. So as he's wandering away, he comes across a girl who has a pet skunk. And even though the sign didn't say strictly no skunks, she doesn't go in because, nobody really likes skunks. And so as they're going along, they come across all these other people with different pets. And they come to a park, and there's an abandoned tree fort. And on the door it says strictly no strangers, no spoil sports. So they cross that off, they write all are welcome, and then everybody is welcome together. So it really fosters, again, another sense of community, but that idea that we create clubs because we have a certain like or a certain interest, but quite often they end up holding people out or keeping people out. And so how can we break down those walls, and allow people to come in a welcoming, inclusive way, and but still keep maybe some boundaries in place. This is fundamentally a club about elephants. However, if you like things other than, like, how can we make this work, right? So it is a tricky path to navigate, but it speaks into, once again, community, and how do we agree to disagree? How do we get along? How do we make sure that voices are heard, but also that whoever started it up is still respected in what they were trying to do when they were starting it up? So community is quite a tricky area to navigate,
but
but having multiple lenses makes
yeah,
a huge difference.
right. And at the beginning of the school year, we're trying to establish those norms, and again,
Yeah.
back to that value and culture. And I find myself teaching these mini lessons over and over again. But one of the ones I try to teach and actually practice with kids is, don't yuck on someone else's yum, which is just like a
Yeah.
catchy way to
Love
say it.
that.
But
Yeah.
then we'll practice. And so, I'm taking note of that book because I think, okay, this is a good illustration of that. And then we'll even practice in the classroom, just with yuck and yum with like food, so like
Yeah,
instead of
yeah.
saying, because they'll go to our students have to make lunch choice. So maybe it'll be like cheese pizza or chicken vegetable bowl,
Yeah.
and the kids will read the menu and they'll make their lunch choice, and some kid will be like, chicken vegetable bowl. That's disgusting. Um, and so then we'll practice like, hey, you don't have to say that. You can think it. And then instead you could say, I'm glad you like that.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, you chose this. That's gross. I hate that. You could just say, I'm glad you like that, because you don't have to express. And there's always the one kid. I had this one kid, it took him almost all year last year in third grade. He'd say, that's disgusting, but I'm glad you like it. I was okay.
I love it.
Okay, John. I'd say, I said, I would make him practice. I would say it without saying that's disgusting. Like, just say,
Yeah.
like, I'm glad. And, so he, through gritted teeth, he'd be like, well, I'm glad you like that.
Yeah.
But it was still, I took it as progress, because I was like, this moves our conversation forward. This builds the kind of community
Yeah,
we
yeah,
want to build,
yeah.
where we don't have to express every single thing we think, which I know in third, we'll see how I do in second grade, but in third and fourth grade, they're very much learning those lessons that, like,
Yeah.
it's okay for me to say, like, I don't want to play with you right now, but I'd like to play with you later when we do an activity we
Yes.
both like.
Right.
How do we make room for everybody, without, you know, throwing I don't know.
Yucking on the yum, I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's borrowed, I'm sure. We any lightning round selections we want to throw out with as we think of the beginning of the school year?
Um, yeah, I have Alexandra Penfold and Suzanne Kaufman's book, All Are Welcome,
Yes, that's a
which is a
phenomenal
great
book
one.
too.
Yeah. And again, like, there are so many children visible throughout the book. And in the middle, it says, we are part of a community. Our strength is our diversity, a shelter from adversity. All are welcome here. So it really focuses on that, drawing in and working and living and playing alongside one another. Another one that I love is School's First Day. And I
Mhm.
don't have the author right here because I lost my
Adam
link.
Adam Rex. Adam Rex.
There we go. Adam
School's
Rex.
First Day
Yes.
of School
I
by
know it
Adam
was a
Rex.
really cool name, but I couldn't get, yeah. And at the beginning of that, it says, it's the first day of school at Frederick Douglass Elementary, and everyone's just a little bit nervous, especially ... the school. And I guess, wait, what? The school's nervous. Why is the school nervous? So it takes a lot of their feelings of what they're experiencing coming into a school or a new class or what have you, and putting it onto the school itself. So I guess I'm thinking outside themselves, but
Mhm.
in a non-human way. So it's the school that they're thinking about. So they can project a lot of their feelings onto the school, that if they try to project it onto a friend, the friend will say, wait a minute, that's not what I'm thinking or not what I'm feeling. The school doesn't say that, right? So those are two books that I read quite often at the beginning of the school year as well.
Another really similar one to
Yeah.
All Are Welcome Here is John Shu's This Is a School. That I think it's a lot in that same vein.
Yes.
And I know Colby Sharp, who just has some really fun, brilliant ideas. He's done,
Yes.
and I think he's done this successfully because he lives in a slightly smaller community, which is a little bit easier to do this. But he's done some really cool things with books and being able to connect kids over grade levels that are
Yeah.
still in a similar building. But one of the things he did with that book is he bought all the kids a copy of the book and had, because he teaches fifth grade, and had all of the teachers in the building who had the kids sign the book, and then they
Love
get that on the last day of school.
Wow.
They read all the notes from their teachers, and they take this as a school, and that's what they part with, is that gift, which was, I thought, such a cool thing to do, to have that book that really exemplifies their school, and then to be able to walk
Yeah.
away with just notes from all the teachers that they've had over the years, which is kind of neat.
That is
Yes.
cool. Hitting the lightning round. Amy Dykman's Misunderstood Shark. This is a really fun early school year read. We Don't Need Our Classmates.
Yes,
love
I
that.
love that.
Penelope Rex.
It's a very
Yep,
important
yep.
lesson. This is a more serious one. Catherine Otoshi wrote this. Lunch Every Day. It came out last year, I think. And in the back, it's the guy whose story it is that she's retelling has his own write-up about it. But it's a story of a little boy who kept stealing another kid's lunch. And then everybody in class got invited to the birthday party, including him. And so he went, the kid who was stealing the lunches. And, the mom, he talks about how it's told kind of through his eyes, how then he sees this family has all this stuff. And the mom notices and says, "Hey, I heard you like my lunches." And he was really embarrassed and thought he was in trouble. And she said, I'll make you a lunch every day. And so this
Wow.
kid's mom just sent him to school with 2 lunches every day, which is just a really powerful thing for elementary kids to think about. And then of a lighter note, Peter Brown's Mr. Tiger
Love
Goes
Mr.
Wild.
Tiger.
With
Yeah.
important lessons about being yourself, and maybe one of the only picture books with a centerfold.
It's hilarious. The kids love
he's
it.
always in clothes, and then lessons about being yourself, and maybe one of the only picture books with a centerfold.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yes.
And the Hawaiian shirt at the end. They love the Hawaiian shirt at the end.
Yes, let's find that.
Yeah.
Yep.
With the flowing hair. Yes.
I love it. Yeah.
He's just being himself. He's being casual. He's being serious,
Yeah.
Yeah, those were at the end of the school year. Like Cindy said, I had a lot of my things packed because I was moving grade levels.
Yeah.
So
don't have stuff at home.
So I popped open some of my boxes and I was I got to decide for book club. And those were just a few I grabbed that they didn't make my list, but I will read them during the first 2 months of school at some point.
Yeah. So Kobe Yamada, I think it's pronounced, wrote a series of books, What to Do with an Idea, What to Do with a Problem. I think What to Do with an Opportunity is the other one. I love, love, love those stories.
They are amazing.
And his use of sort of that grayscale sketch into color to show how you can take those things and turn them around. So those books are beautiful, beautiful series of books. I love them. You can buy them now in a box set, all 3 of them. That's got on the cover What You Do Matters, which is really cool. I've gotten them for gifts for a couple people just because I love the way that's even phrased. I Am Story. So we're talking a lot about story. And how important storytelling is, by Dan Yakakaro. And it's the history of storytelling in books. And what I love about the end part of that book is that it also kind of reminds us that stories and reading and writing are everywhere in our electronic devices and our oral storytelling and pages of the book. So it really is a nice chance for me to talk about reading and writing and all different multimodalities. And I think that that's a
Yeah.
really important thing that I usually want to try and bring into my classroom. We read pictures, we read tapestry, we read the world in so many different ways. And
Yeah.
yet, a lot of times in school, we value that in the pages of a book, which always makes me sad because I think we can bring in families and community more by honoring all the different ways that we read. One of my other new favorites, I do a mock Caldecott every year that I saw, or that came up in our mock Caldecott, was Touch the Sky by Stephanie Yakarovic, I think it's pronounced. And it's just a really fun story about this child that's trying to learn how to swing and doesn't know how to pump. And then
Yes.
to get really high up in the sky and touch the sky. And another child sits down next to them and then teaches them how to pump their legs and how to, go super high and touch the sky. And then when the first child accomplishes that task, a new child sits down on the swing and is all upset because they don't know how to pump and reach the sky. And you see how that's passed along, which I just
Love
think is
it.
beautiful. Somebody helped me learn, and now I'm going to kind of pay that forward. And so it's another really beautiful story that I sort of logged on to during my mock Caldecotts that is a new favorite.
I also love Dan Santat's book After the Fall, right?
And
With that
yep,
perseverance, that getting back up again. That
yep,
sometimes things are really hard, and it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to
yep,
take a little bit of time before you try it again.
yeah, yeah. It's a great his picture books are really phenomenal if you're teaching kids to make sure that you examine every part of a book because he tells the story even in, like, credits in the front, there's tidbits of the story and the difference between the book jacket and the cover. So to be able to teach about all those parts of a book and how they all have the capacity to carry that story, his books are phenomenal for teaching those lessons. Yeah.
Well, this is
I
this
know, we
has
could
been
go on
um,
forever.
we
You
go
were
we
worried about 20 minutes and now we're boom, it's gone.
yeah, we could talk books anytime, but I know Kim, as we record this, had just ended the school year. Cindy and I are a little bit into our summer. I'll have students on August 12th, so we're recording this a little bit in advance. But as we discuss this in July, everybody's somewhere in their summer. Love thinking about that school year that's coming. When you're ready, it'll be there,
Yeah.
and we'll probably be somewhere talking about books. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Kim.